I knew it wasn't okay, but again, I didn't know how to fix it. And I was so afraid that if anybody knew, they'd take her away from me. And my husband, when he was home, he would try to intervene, but I would just get more upset. So it was a very, very destructive pattern and behavior.
Hey there, you're listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and I'm your host, Johanna. If you're like me, you love time with friends. I always leave feeling encouraged, inspired to try something different, or I've learned something new. So why not continue to grow even when we can't be with our girlfriends? We're not made to do life on our own. So in each episode of this show, I'll bring you a girl and her story to give you refreshing ideas to stir your soul. Let's walk this road together. Are you ready to talk life? Hi friend, you are listening to the Girls Talking Life podcast, and this is episode 103. The Girls Talking Life Favorite 5 Gift Guide is here. This guide is a collection of my guests' favorites shared on the show that will make terrific gifts for your favorite people this season. The gift ideas are broken down into categories, linked to where you can find them online, and linked to the episode where they were shared. If you get the GTL newsletter, this gift guide has been delivered to your inbox. If you are not a subscriber, find the link in the show notes to sign up so you can get the guide too. This curated collection of gift ideas is really good. Amy Wolf from episode 85 recommended the makeup eraser towel. I got this for my daughter earlier this year and she loves it. You can find that in the section for daughters along with other terrific gift ideas. Okay, on to today's show. We have lots of emotions. Anger is one of them and it can be destructive, but it doesn't have to be. Natalie Hixson is here to share her story of destructive anger and give us hope. Natalie and I talk about processing anger in a healthy way. She shares what to do in the heat of the moment, how to handle it if you blow it, and a longer-term approach to finding out what's really behind the anger by tracking what triggers you. Natalie is a wife, mother, auntie, and certified professional life coach who helps discouraged Christian moms overcome destructive anger and burnout. Natalie is speaking mostly to moms in this episode, but there's wisdom and strategies that you can use to process anger, whether you're a mama or not. Everything we talk about, including how to connect with her, can be found on girlstalkinglife.com. Here's our conversation. Hi there, Natalie. Welcome to Girls Talking Life.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk to you today. I have not had anyone on the show talking about the topic that we're going to talk about today, so I'm excited to dig in. Will you introduce yourself for the listeners?
Yeah, so I'm Natalie Hixson and I live in Bozeman, Montana with two of our girls. Our oldest just went away to Tennessee for college this year. And I help moms work through destructive anger and burnout. And it's kind of my passion and my story, which we'll get into. But yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So you are a certified professional life coach, and you said you help women overcome this destructive anger and burnout. But what led you down this path?
Yeah, so it really came from my story. So my husband and I are high school sweethearts. And when we first got married, we had been dating for 5 years and we had our little issues here and there, but it wasn't until we moved in together that things kind of hit ahead, right? And I noticed in our fights that I would start screaming and yelling and get so angry and he wouldn't. And I remember one time just going, "Why don't you yell at me?" And he's like, "I just don't do that." Instead, he would withdraw and get really quiet. And I grew up in a house where destructive anger, like yelling, throwing things, slamming doors, that was how anger was expressed. And he had the opposite, where it was very quiet, maybe a little more passive aggressive, and he just didn't work through it in that way. So it was in that first year of marriage, I started to realize there was something, challenging with me. And I started to pick up guilt and shame and worry about how come I'm so angry. And I didn't know that there was a way to fix it. And I started to chalk it up to, this is how my family did it. I've got Scottish Irish blood. I'm just an angry person, and kind of went with it. Fast forward a few years, we brought our first baby home. And when she was about 2 years old, that's when things really started to get really destructive. Aside from the obvious fights that my husband and I had, now we had a baby involved, right?
Yeah.
And you could find both her and I throwing tantrums on the floor. It wasn't pretty. Me crying, screaming, her crying, screaming. And I don't mean to make this sound light at all. And it's not. I was very abusive to her. I'd leave bruises on her. I would threaten her. I would walk away. It was really scary. And I knew it wasn't okay, but again, I didn't know how to fix it. And I was so afraid that if anybody knew, they'd take her away from me. My husband, when he was home, he would try to intervene, but I would just get more upset. So it was a very, very destructive pattern and behavior. And again, not knowing how to do anything with it, like going to bed, crying, and I'm not going to do this the next day. And the next day I'd get up and do it again. It didn't stop us from having more kids. So when we brought her sister home from the hospital, there was another moment where I was nursing her sister. Mike's putting Enya to bed. Enya's tantrums are epic at this point, right? Because I don't know how to help them. I'm just making them worse with my behavior. And I just remember it was a quiet moment with Sky nursing her, but Mike's putting her to bed. Her tantrum's getting more epic. And I'm in a room with the door shut, but I just got to the point where I scream out of rage, Enya, shut up. And Sky stops nursing and looks at me with her tiny little baby face, and she just starts crying. And I'm like, something has to change. And my first thought is, Enya needs help because I obviously can't change, so maybe she can. If she would just listen to me and she'd stop her tantrums, I wouldn't get so angry. So we took her to therapy, and the therapist observed her and then met with us alone. And she said Enya was normal for her age and development, but it was me, Natalie, who needed to come in. And that was hard to hear, but really deep down inside, I was so grateful that somebody was saying, there is hope and you can work through this. And so I agreed, and I went in and I went to therapy for 4 years. It was psychoanalysis therapy. It wasn't Christian based at all. But I left therapy 4 years after that feeling like, okay, I understand why I'm doing some of the things I'm doing. I recognize, the family patterns, history, but I still hadn't gotten over my patterns of yelling. And so I kind of fizzled out from there. I was just like, okay, no, I can keep going. It got the ball rolling for me, but it hadn't stopped that behavior. So I just kept going. My relationship with the Lord started to get a little bit stronger. I started doing different things personally, trying to do different businesses, failing at a lot of different businesses. And finally I was felt led to start life coaching school. And I thought that I was going to go through life coaching school and help moms organize their life because I'm pretty good at organization and doing some of that stuff. So I thought that's what I'll do. But once I got through life coaching school, one of the things in there that was really cool is she said, if you're going to teach, it was Christian life coaching school. And she said, if you're going to coach moms or anyone, you need to make sure that your relationship with the Lord is there, that you are developing that you are constantly tuning into that. And so she was very adamant about us spending time with the Lord on a daily basis, which I wanted to do earlier in my motherhood journey, but I hadn't really caught on to it, right? And so that's where that habit started to develop. And I noticed the change starting to happen within me. And as I grew personally in my relationship with the Lord, I started to see better changes at home with the girls. And changes with me, right? But I left school, completed that, and nothing really happened. I couldn't seem to get clients or anything. So I joined a business mastermind, and it was at that mastermind one night, I was up late with a mama, and we were talking about our anger stories. And she's like, girl, you got to get on my podcast and talk about this. So I did. And after that, that's when mom started reaching out, like, how do I do this? How do I work through this? And it was really starting to coach moms through this that helped me really rise and really recognize how we can work through these things in a healthier way. It gave me more accountability. And yeah, it was just really neat how the Lord used that to keep me going, right? I don't come on to any interview or get on a call with a client and say, you will never be angry again. We're going to talk about that in a second. We don't end anger. We can't stop anger. It's part of who we are. And so we learn how to work through anger in a healthier way. Even if we blow it, how do we work through that? We're not carrying guilt and shame.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that you've been doing it for a while now, so it's maybe not as difficult, but just like the first time that you confessed to someone, this is what's going on in my house. Like that's really big stuff. So first of all, just thank you for being willing to talk about it.
Absolutely. My heart is to reach those mamas who were there like me, like, oh my word, they're going to take my kids away. There's no hope for me, and there is. And it's such a beautiful story of redemption in our family, in my heart. My relationship with Enya, my oldest, who's again now at college this year, it's beautiful and it's open and it's not perfect because nothing is here, right? But she and I have this understanding and this communication. It looks nothing like what I thought it would have back when she was 2, right? And so it's been a really beautiful journey to see how God will restore and redeem as we continue to submit ourselves to him.
I can remember early on in my marriage getting angry, but stuffing it all for as long as I could until I couldn't anymore, and then just blowing up. And my husband, who, he reacts more like you were saying your husband does, and he did not want to have a confrontation. So I can relate to some of what you're saying. And I remember listening to a sermon, and I don't think they were necessarily talking about anger, but he was just talking about asking God to change your heart. And I was thinking, this is an area where I really need his help.
Yeah. Yeah. Make my heart, was it heart of stone? Soften it.
Yes.
But yeah, it is really cool to see how the Lord will work through that. And of course in my marriage as well. So through that whole time as well, I was growing and learning how to communicate better with Mike, and we have a great relationship now. And so it's really a blessing to watch the Lord change that for us. And we're not only changing things for ourselves and our own little family, but it's generational work.
Absolutely.
So I should probably get into some of that too. Okay, so
let's do it.
When it comes to anger, let's talk about the emotions in general. We all have these emotions. I say I kind of follow along the 5 basic, and that is anger, sadness, fear, disgust, and joy, right? There's a lot of negative behavior there. And one like really good one, right? But that doesn't mean that they're bad. Of course, someday we won't have to deal with those negative emotions, right? Someday when the Lord comes back and restores everything, but now we have to work through them. And what does that look like? I like to look at our emotions as a speed bump. And so instead of being mad at yourself for being mad, we go, hey, I'm upset. What does this mean? What's going on for me? What's going on for whoever I might be upset with? So emotions are a good thing. They're there to help us stop and go, what's going on? And there's something not right, whether it's justified or not. We need to stop and take a look at that. And so when it comes down to anger itself, I like to clarify 2 different things. One is normal anger, kind of what I was just talking about, and then destructive anger. So normal anger, you're feeling irritated, you're frustrated. It may be justified or not, but you're having that emotion and you can't stop the emotions that show up for you, right? They come. And so it's recognizing, all right, I'm irritated, I'm upset, that made me angry. That's okay. The destructive behavior is where we take that feeling and we use it as kind of fuel to control a situation, and we hurt our relationships, right? We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to change a certain outcome that we probably can't change at all. And we're just hurting relationships through that destructive behavior. And that behavior can look a lot like screaming in rage, physical abuse, throwing things, slamming doors, belittling, threatening. We've got passive aggressive behaviors where we just walk away, silent treatments, being snarky or like teasing, but it's not really teasing, right? I can remember getting in my car and just driving off in an angry way. Those type of behaviors are also part of destructive behavior. Anything that we're doing to try to basically make a point and control a situation is really, I shouldn't say make a point, but in that controlling that situation, that's where we're using the destructive anger. Normal anger, let's go back to that. You're a mom, you're going to raise your voice. At one point or another, your voice is going to be raised. That doesn't mean that you're being destructive. It means you're getting your kids' attention. And there's oftentimes we have to do that, right? Especially when they're little. So raising your voice is not necessarily destructive, but what's going on when you're raising your voice? Are you threatening them? Are you belittling them? Or are you just basically going, hey, you guys, we've got to go. Let's get moving. That's not destructive. That's mom. That's just getting their attention. So hopefully that kind of clarifies when we're talking about kind of the normal anger and the destructive anger. And even in that normal, healthy anger, I will tell moms, like, you feel like you need to release the energy because you're physically uptight, right? And that's okay. Take a deep breath. And if you need to, roar like a lion. I've had moms, plenty of moms that I've worked with. I've said, roar, get your kids to roar like a lion. Everybody, we're all frustrated. Let's just roar like lions, or, stomp your foot, or say that, just do that in exasperation. And you can tell your kids, I'm upset right now. It's not you that's the problem, but we do have a problem we need to work through. So we're trying to help our kids see, you're not the problem. There is a problem. We got to work through whatever's going on. And sometimes we just need to hit a pillow or release some steam with a little roar or something like that. I even like to get in my car sometimes if it's been particularly stressful, without anyone in the car, just scream at the top of my lungs and let out that energy that's in there.
Yeah, that's so good. Release it in a way that is not destructive to anyone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
So all anger isn't bad, but we have to notice where it's coming from. If we need to, go ahead and release it. And your goal is to help women appreciate and process their anger. So are there other ways that we process this in a healthy way?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things. I'll talk about the sit and pray method. That's the anger and heat of the moment. What do you do with it? And then there's recovery if we do blow it. And then I have a trigger tracker that I'll share with you as well. So sit and pray. That's where it's an acronym. So sit, S is stop, separate. So if you have the ability, I shorten it up and go sit and pee. So you can remember, let's just go to the bathroom really quick, right?
Yes.
Even if the toddlers are following you to the bathroom, it's okay. Shut the door. It's better that you, as long as they're safe. I would like to caveat that. As long as they're safe, you know that they're okay. They may bang on the door. Again, I went through this, but I was like, it's safer for the kiddos to be banging on that door right now with me taking a minute than me just exploding all over them, right? So I go to the bathroom and I would take a deep breath and just okay, it's all right that I'm upset right now. So we validate. That's the tune in part. I is inhale. We're taking a deep breath. And so separating, stopping, inhaling, tuning in. It's okay that I'm upset right now. Anyone would be upset in this moment. Often we get upset with ourselves for being upset, and that just makes us more upset. So we need to validate and go, it's okay that I'm angry right now. I'm not sinning because I'm angry. I'm sinning if I'm using that in a destructive way, right? But I'm just feeling this emotion, and it's okay that I'm feeling that. And so as we do that, we're really staying in the moment more. We're keeping ourselves in this place of, instead of checking out, I can remember my rage. In my rage, I would just go on a rampage screaming, and I'd come back to almost like I just checked out, right? And I'd come back and be like, what did I just do? And so by tuning in and that self-dialogue, we're keeping ourselves more in the moment. And then pray, of course, for asking for strength, for wisdom, for discernment to help us work through this. I don't recommend praying for patience. You'll definitely get the moments to pray for patience. But it's really one of those things where if you can't separate yourself physically from the room, I say, if you're on the floor, get on the couch. If you're on side of the room, walk to the other side of the room. If you need to obviously keep your kids in your sight, do something to just physically change where you're at. And as you're doing that, you're trying to reset with that deep breath, that validation, you're praying. And speak to your kids. Mama's angry right now. I'm really frustrated. I'm frustrated at the circumstances. Even if they did something that was upsetting, it was their own choice or whatever, their immaturity, their childness. If they did something, you're really upset at them for that. It's still important to help them recognize it's their behavior you're upset with, not them as an individual. And so it's just calling it out. I'm upset about what just happened. I need to calm down, and then we'll talk through it. So that's sit and pray.
Okay. So it's separate, inhale, tune in. Is that the sit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Separate, inhale, tune in, and pray.
Excellent.
Sit and pray. And then let's say you blow it. You did yell at your kiddos. Let's just use a scenario where you have two siblings. One was playing with a toy. The other one comes over, steals the toy, and then they get into this little squabble, right? And you're just at your limit. So you scream at them to separate, go away, stop, whatever it is. And then you're like, oh no, I didn't mean to yell at them. What was going on? So you're kind of processing through that. As you calm down and you're ready to go make things right with your kiddos, you go back to them and you say, okay, I'm so sorry that I yelled at you. It was okay that I was upset, but it wasn't okay that I yelled at you in that way. So we're taking responsibility for our behavior first and foremost, and apologizing for how it hurt them. And this can be with littles, all the way to teens, all the way to your husband or anyone else in your life. We go back and we apologize and make that right. And then we can go, I know you were upset because your sister stole your truck, but it wasn't okay to chuck your truck at her and hurt her. And so we validate how they were feeling. I understand you were upset. And then we point out the behavior that wasn't okay. And how are you feeling? Just kind of tuning into them. What's going on for you? And then after that, we can say, I like to pray with the kids if possible. Sometimes we don't have time for all of this, and that's okay. We can shorten it up. The big thing is, like with sit and pray, it's that reset moment. Even if all you can do is take a deep breath and go, Lord, help me. In the recovery, if you have the time to do recovery in the moment, great. If it has to be later, it can be a bedtime thing or even the next day. I also like to put a little element of physical touch into recovery. So whether they're sitting on your lap or your arms on their shoulder or there's a hug, just showing love and acceptance there. And then after that, if there needs to be a consequence, that's when consequences come out. So you threw your truck at your sister, we're going to put your truck on timeout for an hour. Or we can ask them, what do you think? Or kind of involve them in a conversation. That's totally up to your parenting style and what you want to do. But that's when they're going to be more receptive to taking consequences, as opposed to you're angry in the moment. You're like, that's it. I'm throwing your truck in the garbage. My girls know that if I get upset, we've got teenagers now, so we've got phones and all that kind of stuff. So if I'm upset, I'm like, that's it. You lose your phone for a week. They know mom's upset. That doesn't fly. So we've had that conversation. Like sometimes we are upset, we say things we don't mean. In those moments, if I say something, we'll figure it out once we calm down and recover. So just recognize sometimes we will say things and we think we have to stick to them. But if we said that in the heat of our anger, we need to just call that out with our kids and be like, you know what? I was angry. And so I take that back. Let's work through it in a different way.
I remember being in that situation before, and I dislike it so much because I want to mean what I say and say what I mean. So I'm like, do I hold on to what I said, even though it's a little, out there, or do I just scrap it and then let them know mom was just mad? This isn't the way we're going to work it.
Yeah, it's really important that we are able to go back and communicate that with them, because we're teaching them that same thing, right? That's grace, that's forgiveness. And many times I have a mom that I'm working with, she's like, oh, I blew it again. And I'm like, that's awesome. What did you learn from it? And we often look at our motherhoods in this way that we can't ever get upset and we shouldn't ever get upset. And of course, we don't want to sin. We don't want to hurt anybody. But again, we're always at war with our flesh. And so it's going to happen, unfortunately. And what we get to take from those experiences are, how can I use that to grow personally? And how can I use that to teach my kids? Because if we think our kids are going to grow up and never get angry, we're fooling ourselves. right? How do we get to use these moments at home, even though we don't like them, even though we would rather never have an upset moment with our kids? How can we use those moments to teach them, hey, we all get upset. This is how we process anger in a healthier way. So that's another way we get to release that guilt and shame too, of I blew it today. So we got to go back and recover. We, with the Lord, we confess, repent, repeat, right? We could do that with our kids. I made a mistake. Please forgive me. Let's keep moving forward. And one thing that really happens a lot too is moms will say, I'm so sorry I got mad at you. I'm trying not to. I won't do it again tomorrow, or I won't do it again, or I'll stop yelling at you. That can be hurtful because it's not true. We are going to hurt our kids. We are going to hurt our husbands. We're going to make mistakes. And so instead of trying to live in this attitude and this thought of, I'm never going to do this and one day I'll get over it, we've got to go, this is part of life and I need to learn how to work through it in a healthier way, process it, and make it right. One way that we can work through our triggers is what I have. I have a trigger tracker, and your listeners can go to my website, nataliehixson.com. And so you just enter your email, it's free, and then you'll get a PDF download and it'll give you these journaling prompts and I'll ask you what happened. And that's like whatever the situation is. You fill that in. And then the next thing is, what did you do? Right? So the situation, my kids were fighting. What did you do? I yelled at them. I threatened them. And that's not the fun one to fill in. Nobody likes to confess what they just did, right? But I really like that on there because we need to take a look at our behavior and what we do. And then it's what was going on for us. Were we hormonal? Were we hangry? Were we tired? Did we just get some bad news? Did we just get out of a social media binge, right? Were we distracted on something? Whatever it is, let's look at that so we can recognize, okay, this behavior happened because of this big picture item. Maybe there was nothing going on. Maybe it's just a pattern. And that's something we get to look at too by filling this out. We get to stop and kind of examine what's going on here. And when we do that, often we can either nix the trigger altogether, or we get to start working towards understanding and having more awareness in that trigger when it happens again. So we look at that. We also look at, what do we want this to look like next time? Well, next time I'd like to sit and pray and take a moment before I go in and start yelling at them. Next time I'd like to go in there and go, hey, what's going on? You two need to take a little break from each other, right? And then we can also look for some biblical truth in there too. And I encourage moms to go look up some Bible verses to kind of encourage them in that way. So that's the trigger tracker. Again, what it's doing is it's helping us build awareness around these triggers. Sometimes we walk through them and didn't even realize that it's because of this scenario that I've been getting upset. It just gives that clarity in the moment, because often what we're doing is we're just running to the next thing and we don't give any thought to, except for the guilt and shame, we don't give any thought to what's going on. We just get upset at ourselves for getting upset.
That's so good. It sounds like a really powerful tool to help you notice what's really going on.
Yeah.
You talked about praying and you talked about some biblical truths. What are some other ways that God has just worked on your heart, or some things that you've done to kind of invite him into that?
Yeah. So again, going back to that daily habit, it's what I call the soul refresher. And often, depending on the stage of motherhood you're in, first of all, if you're in a stage of motherhood where it just feels like, especially with the littles, if they're waking you up early, you're not getting sleep, maybe you're nursing, whatever, you feel like, I just can't seem to get it in, or I get distracted every time. I want to say that the Lord knows that. He knows what season you're in. He sees what's going on in your life. And so there's grace for that. But at the same time, even if you can get 5 minutes in and it's not first thing in the morning, I really encourage moms to do that, because we have to recognize his voice in order to hear him when we are upset, right? And we can't recognize his voice if we're not spending time with him. I like to kind of look at this analogy where if you're married and let's pretend you stay home and he works all day. And when he comes home, he walks in the door, and the first thing you do is, hi, happy to see you. Give him a hug and a kiss. And you're like, this is what happened today. I need help with this. Can you fix this? And, oh, thanks for stopping to the store for the milk. And then you didn't say anything else the rest of the night or day. What would your relationship with your husband look like? There's no intimacy there. There's no connection. There's no relationship. You don't know anything about him. And so when we approach God and our relationship with him like that, we don't know who he is and we can't hear his voice. We could take that a step farther. If your husband doesn't get a word in edgewise and he calls you one day and you're like, who's this? You don't even recognize his voice, right? So it's really valuable for us to take that time. And if you have to read a 5-minute devotional or you get a Bible verse and you just, Lord, help me understand this, or just whatever bite sizes you can get in, and you can talk to the Lord all day long. I'm always talking to him. Taking that time as you can to spend time in prayer, listen for his voice, read his word. Those are the things that are really valuable to help us recognize his voice and his spirit and grow the fruits of the spirit. I remember in my journey at one point going, Lord, why'd you give me kids? Or did I even really accept you? Do you really even exist? Because I thought that once I accept Jesus, I got the fruits of the spirit and I got no fruits here. And he really helped me recognize that, yes, you're given the spirit and yes, he has the fruits, but it's your job to help cultivate and grow that in your heart. And the way you do that is by turning to me on a regular basis. And through you turning and surrendering to me, I help you grow those fruits. That's kind of what I came to and started to recognize as I continued to spend more time with him in that relationship.
Yeah, that is so good, Natalie. Thank you. Fall is in full swing, school, performances, sports, and then we are about to embark here on the holiday season. So what would you say to the mom who's like, okay, on normal days, I'm doing good with my anger. I'm processing it in a healthy way, but there's pressure coming. Moms do a lot around the holidays, or there's, just that extra added tension. What would you say to her?
I would say, first of all, if you have the time to kind of go, all right, what's this going to look like for us? We just ended volleyball season in our house. And it's the second season we were in. Last year, we were remodeling our kitchen. So we thought everything was crazy because we were remodeling our kitchen. This year, we weren't doing that. And we're like, no, it's just crazy because it's volleyball. And really, there was like a lot of frustration that came through that. A lot of recovery, a lot of sit and pray, right? Trigger tracking. Yes, even me, I am not perfect, have not arrived, and I totally claim that. I still get upset, but I use the tools that I talk about today to help work through that. And so I've been thinking a lot about that and going, I really need to try to plan a little better for next year's volleyball season. So I recognize what's valuable and what's not. So what can we let go of? Watch out for the comparison traps. We start seeing things on social media, or we go to the store and see all the pretty things. We're like, oh, we got to have the perfect Christmas or the perfect Thanksgiving. And you don't have to have the perfect anything. So really watching yourself with the comparison, because that will take us into a negative spiral. And when we're in that negative spiral, that's when we start doing more destructive behaviors. And then the next thing is, watching for those triggers. Download that trigger tracker and use that. Start kind of preparing for some of those things. If you can think back to things that trigger you in high stress moments, try to process through a trigger and see what you can start to become more aware of as you're walking through some of these frustrations.
I think that is fabulous advice. I've been planning ahead for usually like my Christmas season in advance, not tracking my triggers, but just listing out things I know that I need to do, like making myself notes, do this for next year to make things easier and to make things better. But the way that you suggested that to ward off how you might react in a high stress situation, that is really, really smart.
One thing I like to tell my clients too, regardless on where you're at, is look for opportunities to sit and pray, because then we're putting those times where we start to get frustrated in a more positive light. So while you're walking through holiday season, look for opportunities to sit and pray. And if you're getting together with family or friends, and maybe there's somebody who rubs you the wrong way, maybe there's anxiety about seeing family, you sit and pray. There's no one's going to question you on having to go to the bathroom, whether you really have to go or not. So if you're starting to feel irritated and you just kind of need, I'll tell my moms, do a pre-sit. Let's walk through, sit down, and kind of think through all the scenarios that could happen. And you can do this for anything, pumpkin patch outing, caroling, going anywhere, whatever, any situation, even before bedtime routines. Take that moment and sit and pray. Before you call bedtime and things start to get crazy, right? I like to tell my mom, sit and pray, get yourself collected and kind of think through, here's some of the things that trigger me. It's okay that I get upset. It's like, I'm going to do my best to not get destructive. I'm going to pray for strength in that. If I do, I'll recover. So we're kind of thinking through, what are all the ways that I could get upset? How can I work through that? What do I want it to look like? So we're kind of trying to set ourselves up for success in that. And then we're also recognizing, if I blow it, I will recover. Not that we want to use recovery as an excuse to blow it, but there's that piece that if we do, we can go back and recover. So hopefully that's helpful too.
So helpful. If a mom is listening and she is like, I need what Natalie has to offer here, how can a mom work with you?
Yeah, so she can head over to my website, and that's where I'm at, not on social media for business anywhere. And I'm currently, as we're recording this, updating the program. So the coaching piece will open back up at the beginning of this next year. So just hop on the list. I'm sending out emails and there's blogs and stuff to help encourage as they're waiting for the coaching piece to open back up.
Fantastic. Last here, I would love to ask what your favorite 5 are. What are 5 things that you are drinking or wearing or watching right now that you just love?
Yeah. Okay. So reading, I love reading so much. And I'm actually reading through the Bible right now. For the first time in my life, I started 4 years ago and I just finished the Old Testament. And I thought that was pretty fun to finally complete that.
Nice. Yeah.
So there's that. That's been awesome. But I also love psychological thrillers. So there's, and considering the season we're kind of in, it's kind of fun to read those. So mindset person, love psychological thrillers. Let's see. Another thing is access.org is something I've been really loving right now. They have a thing called a culture translator. I've got teens. So anyone listening who has teenagers, they're helping parents connect to what's going on with their social media, with music, how to help have conversations with your teenagers around the culture. So that's been really awesome. And then some fun things, my Breville espresso maker. I love that. American Eagle. My kids got me into American Eagle clothing. The sweaters and leggings and jeans are totally cozy and comfortable. And then Autumn Chai scent at Bath and Body Works. Their candle right now.
Very
all good.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you for sharing those. Natalie, I think that you are doing such important work. I love the fact that you are using everything that you've learned and helping other moms. And I think this conversation is going to be really timely and really helpful to so many people.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been great. If you are a mom out there who's scared, please reach out to somebody, whether it's me or your pastor or friend. Don't hold it in. You need to talk about it and get help for it, because you're not alone. You're not the only one who's ever went through that. And you can find hope and help and redemption and restoration in that.
Thanks for listening. I hope this has given you some new tools to help you process anger in a healthy way. And if you struggle in any of the ways that Natalie described, take this as your invitation to talk to someone and start to break that unhealthy cycle. It could be a generational change for your family. You can connect with Natalie and grab her trigger tracker by going to her website, nataliehixson.com. I'll have the direct link for you in the show notes. I have noticed this recurring theme in a lot of the episodes this fall, and that is that spending time in God's Word is essential. In January, I'll be starting the Bible reading plan that goes along with the Bible Recap podcast. You read a few chapters, and then Tara-Leigh Cobble recaps what you read. If you have never read the Bible all the way through, or even if you've done it several times, I encourage you to join me next year and read along with the Bible recap. This will be my third time going through the Bible, and I just love it. Message me, email me, get in touch, and let me know if you're going to start it with me. Also, don't forget to grab the Girls Talking Life Favorite 5 gift guide. Find that link in the show notes too. Friend, don't let the conversation stop when the show is over. Share your story and start your own conversations with the girls in your life. I will see you back here in 2 weeks. Thanks for tuning in.